Hey, what's up, guys? Christian here. It's a little bit more of a serious video. I want to talk about something that's really important to me, and that's the addiction that work can be. If you have an addictive personality, sometimes you don't know what a limit is. Sometimes you don't know what enough is. Sometimes it can lead to very bad things like drug and alcohol addiction, poor habits, or mental issues. And sometimes it can lead to good results like having an addiction to working out or addictive to having a healthy lifestyle, or addictive to being organized. And sometimes it can be a mix. If you're an entrepreneur with a good work ethic but no self-discipline, you can find yourself in a really bad situation. To start, my name is Christian Gillespie. I grew up in an entrepreneur household where my dad always worked for himself in some way. We had our good times and we had our bad times, but overall my dad worked his butt off to provide for his family. He owned an IT company, a web design company, and a drug and alcohol center. I got that gene from my dad for sure. In school, my was always focused on a net result rather than showing the work. I was disorganized, but I was always looking outside the box for a solution that'd be easier than what was provided. So I had my GPA, my grades calculated to plan how much homework I had to avoid to still pass, and if I took a test, I knew exactly how much I had to try to actually guarantee a net minimum success. And what I realize now is that I wasn't learning what school was meant for. It was meant to teach you how to learn. When I got to college, the dynamic was shifted. I found myself struggling to adapt to this new environment where homework was weighted way heavier and my cute little shortcuts were ignored or punished. And what I realized is was I was addicted to the endorphins of cleverness, or rather the solving of puzzles. I found myself bored with doing something that had been done before, so I immediately lost interest in college. I got my associates while also working at a bank, where I got a little bit of that excitement by working with interaction with clients to find solutions to get them to talk to the sales staff. So it led to me learning a lot about sales. But when I found esports, like, that fire for work was lit. I spent hours and hours trying to build my skill set to enter this field, casting, managing, tournament organizing. Everywhere I went, I was trying to approach and do new things. So when I got my job with Nerd Street Gamers for social media, I was immediately intimidated. But I was hooked on the idea of changing the game. So I struggled at first with my confidence. My posts were irregular. There was a lot of mistakes. But after a few months, I was getting in the full swing of producing content. We saw a lot of growth. Once we started finding those little success points, I was dedicating most of my time to it. It wasn't that the deadlines were crazy or the work was massive. I was determined to work harder than anyone in my role had before. And this tripled when I was diagnosed with ADHD and I was given Adderall. I went from being all over the place to just following my goal, and the endorphins I got from task completion just exploded. I was spending late nights posting. I was going to events to get content that I wasn't required to. I was making my social feed I was trying to make it look like 4 different people managed it. And at first I was succeeding. The issues really started during COVID. You see, before I had to leave the office, so there was a separation of work and personal life. But now working from home, my commute was 6 feet. I was also terrified of the pandemic. I mean, while our company was able to navigate the waters and, as a whole, the company would have been fine, if things did end up turning south, I could only imagine they were getting rid of the guy who tweets. You know what I mean? So, I mean, I know that now that was a bit naive, but, at the time, the world was on fire, but as a direct result of this, I neglected myself. Before COVID, I was just getting back into a workout routine. I was starting to actually build that balance because I could leave work. But now I was at home all day. I was binging food. I was just sitting down, not getting up, doing anything. I was going from my bed to my desk, to my bed, my desk, and I was going downstairs and just grabbing food, coming back up, not talking to anybody. And when I started neglecting myself physically, I started to neglect my relationships too. I couldn't hang out much with my friends in person, but I still talked to them, and then I stopped talking to them. When it came to my SO, I responded really slowly. Same with my parents. Sometimes I wouldn't even respond to a text from my parents, and then I just secluded myself to my room, and I just for me, leaving the office was now alt tabbing over to a game, and I was so stressed that every day would be the last day of my job that I kind of gave up on myself. And when I did see my CSO in person, I was distracted. I was glued to my phone. I was always talking about work, focused on work. I didn't live life. I wasn't living life. And in a pandemic, it's understandable, but I was to a different extent. But, and even when I got promoted to a new position, I still had those stressors. I wanted everything to be perfect. I still had my hands on the rein. I was so afraid to hand off my reins. I was addicted to my work, and it all caught up to me. Without getting into specifics, I ended up having a spat with my parents that, went south. Like, we got into a big argument, and, I was just furious. And then shortly thereafter, my relationship ended. And at that point, that's what destroyed me, because I realized at that point, I wasn't taking care of my relationship with my friends. I didn't take care of my relationship with my SO. My relationship was falling apart with my parents. I was alone. All I had was my work, and it was bad. But I had, in that time, like that, you have that pitfall, that like that drop in your stomach when you're all alone. And I had a lot of time to think about my life, what I was doing, where I was going. I was so career focused that I forgot about life. I didn't do anything. I was prided myself in that. I let myself be the first person in, the last person out, and just that's what fueled me, was to I always had this motto: I'm not going to be funnier than the funniest guy in the room. I'm not going to be cooler than the coolest guy in the room, but I will be the hardest working person in the room. And I was, and it led to me having these issues. When you don't balance your life, it can come crashing down. You're not setting yourself up with these emotional pillars to keep yourself afloat. And that's exactly what happened to me. My world came crashing down. I felt like I had nobody, and I was at a really dark time. And that's what burnout is. That's the definition of burnout. But, you have to move forward. You can try and pick up the pieces of what you had before, but, relationships and love and all that stuff, it's almost like a piece of paper. You get it, it's flat, it's, and moving it around, it'll get a couple wrinkles here, but when you do that and you neglect it the way you do and you crumple it up, you can try and flatten that the best you can, but that paper will never be straight again. And it's up to the other person or the other people to decide whether or not they want to accept that crumpled piece of paper. So it's and that's the fact of the matter. So you have to move on, and it sucks, but that's just how life is. So that's why you need to make sure you're building this balance. If you're not familiar with what speedrunning is, it's the act of playing through a game with this single goal of being able to complete it with the lowest time possible. You're not getting every single achievement. There are versions but the one I'm referring to, you just want to get from point A to point Z in the fastest amount of time, finding any skip you can get. And that's exactly what I was doing. And when you speedrun a game, you're skipping achievements, you're skipping the game, the dialogue, you're skipping the experience, you're skipping the joys of failure, skipping the puzzles. You're not actually playing the game. You're trying to break the game. You're trying to do it. And sometimes when you're speedrunning, you can hurt yourself to go faster, or you can hurt yourself to take shortcuts. And it's a risky thing to do, and sometimes it pays off, but other times it can be the end of your run. That could be it. And that's the same thing with real life. When you take these shortcuts and you try to do these things that are huge risks, you're potentially putting your health and your mental wellness in harm's way. And like I said, that's exactly what I did. I put my full focus into my job, and it ended up ruining a lot of things that I really cared about and you didn't take care of. So after all of that, I made a decision on Monday. I'm going to get up. I'm going to go for a jog. And it sucked. I'm a big guy. Jogging sucks. So I went for a jog, and I went home and I made some eggs. I made an omelet. And then at lunch, I went for another walk, a short walk. And that night, I went for a run. My legs were killing me that day. And then the next day, I told myself, you're doing the same thing. You're going to do the same thing. Because one, I was heartbroken. So, I figured the pain that I could put on my heart, no, it's you might as well do it. Because if your heart hurts when you run, you might as well just add it to, you know what I mean? Like I didn't know if it was the heartbreak or the running that was hurting, but I just knew it was hurting. And I just kept doing that until, I started to see a difference in my attitude and a difference in my outlook. And all of a sudden, like, I felt more energized. I sat in front of my PC. I could think a lot clearer. Even though I had Adderall, I couldn't think as clear as I did when I was taking care of myself. But, I started eating right. I paid off all my debts. I paid off my car. I ended up getting an apartment. Like, all this stuff that I realized I could have done months ago if I was just focused. And I wasn't focused because I was so focused on my job. But, I learned that now, and the reason I'm making this video is because I want you to watch this video and I want you to see what it does when you focus your 100%. Like this, there's this mentality about the grind that, you need to grind, you need to put your full self in. There's consequences. There are consequences to the grind. I faced the consequences. I thought I was above the consequences. I thought that I was above having to face the reality, but I wasn't. And now I'm single, and I'm repairing the relationship with my parents, but there's a lot of things that I just can't go back and fix. There's friendships I messed up, so don't let my mistakes be your mistakes. Take care of yourself and realize that there are healthy ways to quote unquote grind. You can put in your best effort and then walk away and take care of yourself. Because if I'm hiring someone, I'm not hiring the guy who works 24/7. I'm hiring the guy who somehow found out how to fit all of that work in 8 hours. And yeah, that's honestly, that's the biggest thing for me now. If I, you know what I mean, finding the people who do find that balance, because I didn't have that balance. And luckily, I work for an amazing team. I have an amazing director who, my director tells me more often than not, stop working more than please start working. That's a weird thing to be told by your director, but that's because of the person that I am. And now I've understand that there was reasons for that. I thought that it was more like, just don't do that. You don't need to do that. But I always thought that I could handle it. And, I was blind. And now, like I said, I'm going to listen to my team. I'm going to listen because it's, like I said, it led to a lot of negative effects in my life. So I want you to watch this video and understand that life needs to happen, and you need to let life happen, and you will move on, and you will succeed. You just need to make sure you're building a balance, because speed running your life is, you might see benefits, you might see some success. I saw some success off of it. I'm not gonna lie, the amount of work that I put in is part of the reason why I got to where I am. And being that kind of a grinder is where, what led me to a lot of successes. But looking back, it's hindsight's 2020. I could have done all of that with a much healthier lifestyle, and I still would be here in the same spot at that same time. The only thing I lacked was foresight. So I want to end this on a quote from Ferris Bueller that, once again, I didn't really get until now, but it's, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around once in a while, you're going to miss it. So thank you for watching, and, take care of yourself and make sure you're taking care of the people that matter.